Get your pad out and pencil because you want to take some notes.
Yeah, and then replay the recording, but make sure you play it at half the speed because I've been known for talking fast. I'm Paige, I'm an alcoholic, and I was gonna do a big book bounce around, and Vivian was like, give us more." So what I might do is a bit of both. I might do a bit of a hybrid, bounce around, dive in, and give you a little bit more than maybe I normally do. And so where I was feeling called was the bottom of page 25. If you have your book to hand, grab it. If not, don't you worry. I'm gonna be I'm gonna be doing the reading. You don't have to do any reading. Uh, you know, I'll do all the heavy lifting. You just gotta, lay back and yeah, no worries if you fall asleep on your laptop. We got a welcome chip for you. Love that. All right. And so where I want to dive in is the very bottom paragraph of page 25. If you're as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. And you see, I don't know about you, but by the time I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was like, goodness gracious, I certainly hope not, and definitely do not think that I am as seriously alcoholic as you are. See, I don't know about you guys. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous with a whole lot of andas. You know what I mean? I'm an alcoholic anda. And let me tell you, not only did I come with Andas, oh, I was packing some baggage. I got some yeah buts. Anyone here come to AA with yeah buts? Yeah, I'm an alcoholic, yeah, but he's way worse than me. And by the way, that he is my alcoholic boyfriend. Yeah, but I'm young. Yeah, but this. Yeah, but that. Do you know what I mean? And I would do this thing. And it's this thing that you lovely, wonderful people in Hilton Head, South Carolina would never do. But I guess we do it up in Canada. Uh, you guys don't, though. And it's called judging the speaker. You would never, but I would do that. And I would listen to some jerk like me natter on, and I'd think, whoa, 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 I'm not as bad as her. And then the very next person that would share, maybe somebody lovely like Vivian, and I'd be like, I'm way worse than her. Look at her. She's got her stuff together. And I would look for all the ways that I didn't fit in and all the ways that I didn't belong. But here's the thing, I also desperately wanted to be a part of. I desperately did not want to feel the way that I had been feeling. Now, I'll share with you what my life looked like by the time I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, at least on the surface. By the time I had come to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had spent about a year or so living on the streets of Calgary. Now, I wasn't at the lowest point by the time I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, but I was homeless, living on the streets. And I could not see alcoholism as a contributing factor to that circumstance. Uh, I'm like, the two are unrelated. And to keep in mind, I don't talk a lot about that because if you're like me, you're thinking, man, I wasn't homeless in Canada. I don't know what that's like. You know what I mean? I'm looking for all the ways I'm not like you. And I had been in a codependent, now I'm gonna call it a relationship just to sound polite, but that is not what that was. It was a codependent, why don't we say hostage situation? Anyone here ever not get into a relationship, but instead take a hostage? So it was a codependent hostage situation. We were together in a dumpster that was on fire, careening off a cliff, but I had convinced myself it was a loving relationship. Now, that gentleman, he was 16 years older than me. I know it's a little early in the morning to tell you I got daddy issues, but here we go. 16 years older than me, and he had been drinking and using drugs the entire 16-year age gap. And I saw that guy, and I'm like, well, let me fix him. But also, I'm not as bad as that guy. Because by the time I got here, I was convinced that what alcoholism was that you had seizures before the liquor store opened at 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 on Sundays. And that wasn't me. And so that was what was driving me to be not like you. Now, I'll tell you again, by the time I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I wasn't at the worst place of my life. I wasn't at the lowest point of my life. My life was not as burnt down as it had been, but I was broken on the inside and I could not find a way out. But again, I was wrestling with maybe I'm like you, maybe I'm not, maybe it's my Andas. What about my yeah buts? I'm not like you. And it says, we believe, if you are seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. I'll be quite frank. I was looking for some of those middle of the roads. I'm like, just going to meetings? Why, that sounds delightful. That sounds like a course of action that I would like to take, just hanging out, having some coffee, having some, you know what I mean? Like sometimes they have cookies and donuts, not always though. Uh, and it says we were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And that's one of those lines, man. How did you know? My life was becoming impossible. And I'll share with you, my life was impossible when I was drinking, and it was just as impossible when I was sober. Man, I couldn't do it. I don't know about you, but for me, every single day was absolute agony. How did they know? And it says, and if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, gosh, I hope I'm not there. I hope I'm not in that region. That doesn't sound like good news. I don't want to be there. We had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting up the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other, to accept spiritual help. That doesn't seem like a good set of options. But I don't know about you. Seeing those two, I'm like, I don't know about that. That is not a hopeful. So what do I got to do? Go on to the bitter ends, blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation. And again, just to tell you what that looked like for me. Of course, that looked like drinking to oblivion. Of course, that looked like the lines in the sand that I would continue to cross. But I will also tell you what going on to the bitter end looked like for me. It looked like me sober, sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. My insides are on fire. My skin doesn't fit, and I don't want to do it another day. And I am absolutely suicidal. You see, that alcoholic death, sometimes we think it only looks like liver cirrhosis, or maybe we get a little bit more creative in a DUI sort of car accident. But just as much as that is just as much as my alcoholic death would have ended me stone cold sober and taking myself out. And I share that with you because if you are in the rooms, well, obviously you're in the rooms today. Thank you for coming. But if you're here today and you're feeling like that, and you're feeling life, the unmanageability of life, the impossibility of life, drunk or sober, the hopelessness of life, drunk or sober, the inability to sit and be okay in your own skin, drunk or sober, and you don't think that there's a way out. And that little voice of, man, I could just take myself out. I don't need to be here. The reason I talk about that is because if that is you today, what I want you to know is that there is a solution. We have a solution in Alcoholics Anonymous. We have a way out. Not just don't drink and go to meetings, because that is not possible for somebody like me. We have freedom. But I have to see the hopelessness of my predicament before I'm willing to accept the hope that is on offer. So I don't like those options. That doesn't sound good. I want to do that. I got to figure out if I am beyond human aid. And so where do we go? Let's go on a little bounce. Just one little bounce. It's not even going to be far. Very bottom of page 24. Little bounce, little baby bounce. It's not going to be too crazy, this big book bounce around. Like some of them, we are all over the place. But this one, we're going to be not too crazy. So very bottom paragraph, page 24. It says, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. Uh-oh, that's what we were talking about. Beyond human aid, Okay, so what do I got to do? I got to figure out if I have these alcoholic tendencies, and I got to figure out what sort of thinking they're talking about. So I just lied to you. I said we were going to do a crazy bounce. We're going to do a crazy bounce right now. If you want, you don't have to bounce too hard. Let's go to page XXX. Pew, pew. It's in the doctor's opinion. And that's only if you want. If you're like, girl, it is, well, it's 7 in the morning for me, 9 in the morning for most of you. It is early. I don't want to bounce. Don't worry about it. where we're going is on page XXX, and it's right below the 5 different types of drinkers. It goes on to say all these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. And it describes this as this allergy. And so, what does it mean to have alcoholic tendencies? What it means is what happens when I start to drink. What happens when I start to drink? I'll tell you what happens to me. I take a drink. The first thing that happens to me, and I'll point out this allergy does not happen to non-alcoholics, but I will tell you the first thing that happens to me when I take a drink is, oh, do you guys know what I'm saying? Oh, it's like my shoulders, man. I was wearing those things as earrings. It's the only jewelry I ever wore. Ugh, you know, and they fall, and I am okay. Oh, I can feel okay in my skin. I'm comfortably numb. The screaming that is coming from the depth of my soul, it quiets down. Everything is okay. You see, I take a drink and I get a solution to life. Now, if that was the only thing that was a little abnormal about my reaction to alcohol, I wouldn't be there, or I wouldn't be here. I'd be out there doing that, because that worked. That worked. But you see, I take that drink and I get that effect, even if only for a fleeting moment. And what happens for me is a little switch gets flipped off in the back of my head. And that switch tells me more. And what it looks like is just one more drink. But you see, the more that I drink, the louder that more gets. See, I take a drink and that drink demands a second. And that second insists on 4. And that 4th drink will not relent until I've had 8. And my 8th drink is screaming at me until I've had 16, and so on and so forth. And you see, what happens to me is I take a drink and I get thirstier. And if you're like, I don't know if that's a problem, what I will tell you is that does not happen to me with any other beverage. Any other beverage, it does not happen. You see, this morning, I got up, I started my day with prayer, I started my day with meditation, and I had a cup of Earl Grey tea. But not once. Yeah, tea drinkers, woo! And by the way, if you're judging that, listen, my stomach stopped handling coffee like a couple years ago. And I'm only sharing that with you because I want you to feel bad for me. Thank you. Just gonna revel in that validation. Thank you. But I start my day with a cup of Earl Grey tea. I love it. I love mugs up. Woo! Everyone's drinking their tea. But not once in my life. Now, your experience might be different than mine, but not once in my life have I ever gone on a 3-day Earl Grey tea bender. Not once. Not once have I had a cup of tea and slammed back another and another and another and drank all the tea that I could find and was scrounging in the pantry for a box of chamomile, ripped it open and snorted it because it's gotta be the same. I just have a cup of tea. You know what I'm saying? So what happens to me as an alcoholic does not happen to a non-alcoholic, and it does not happen to me with any other beverage. But you see that allergy of the body. Now, also, if you're here and you're looking for the ways that you're not an alcoholic, the ways that you don't belong, I want you to know that it does not set off every single time. But the longer that I am drinking, the more it sets off. Because if you're like me, you're sitting and you're like thinking, man, there was a time back in 84. Back in 84, I had 3 drinks like a lady and my pants were dry and everything. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that your brain is grabbing a hold of it tells me that that is the exception, not the rule. And I won't tell you about your drinking, I'll tell you about mine. More often than not, wet pants and missing shoes, like a lady, you know? I cannot control the amount that I take. If I did, I probably would have stopped before the pants got wet. Just gonna throw that out there. Again, like a lady. Oh gosh, who invited me? Vivian. This is a Vivian problem. You can put her in column 1 or send her the strongly worded email. I say I will take complaints, but I only take them via carrier pigeon. So carrier pigeon or 4-column inventory. That's how I take complaints. So what happens? is I take this drink and it sets off that thing inside me that says more. And the more that I drink, the louder that more gets. And nothing is as important as getting that next drink. And the result of that is that I cross these lines in the sand. I do things I said I would never do. I hurt people in ways I never wanted to hurt people. I break trust that I never wanted to break. I destroy hearts that I never wanted to destroy. I lose relationships that meant everything to me. And talking about the things that I lose, of course I lose my shoes. Sometimes I lost my pants, but I lost hopes, I lost dreams, I lost dignity, I lost self-respect. I lost goals, I lost opportunities, I lost who I thought I was. You see, I would come to the morning after, and I'm going to be a little bit classy for you, so I would scrape myself up off the bathroom floor. Oftentimes, I'm a behind the dumpster sort of gal, but I want to be classy here in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And I could not even look myself in the mirror. I hated who I was. I hated who I became. You see, I don't know about you, but that is what it is like to be an individual with alcoholic tendencies. That once I start, I cannot control the amount that I take every single time. It turns out I got those tendencies. But you see, the pain and the suffering and the degradation and the humiliation that is driven by the allergy of the body, it would lead me to say, that is it, I'm never going to drink again. Now, back on page 24, it says, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, I have those alcoholic tendencies. So that is one of the diagnostic criteria of alcoholism. Once I start, I cannot stop. Once I start, I cannot control it every single time. But what does it mean to have this sort of thinking? What does it mean to have this alcoholic thinking? Well, we're back on page 24, so it's not a big bounce, just a little bounce. Let's go to the very top of the page, first full paragraph. It says, the fact is, not theory, not wish, not maybe, but the fact, not an opinion, this is our experience, is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, we do not know why, have lost the power of choice in drink. And what does it mean to lose the power of choice in drink? If I do not have the ability to choose whether I will drink or not, and I have alcoholism, that means I will drink again. I will drink again. If I do not have the ability to choose, the relapse is inevitable. Bear with me, we're going to talk about why. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. And you see what happens is I burn my life to the ground. I cause pain and suffering and humiliation. And I scrape myself off the floor and I say with everything that is in me, I never want to drink again. I don't want to do it again. But what happens to me is a day, a week, a month, couple months down the line, I get a thought. And that thought happens in my mind, and it happens when I am as sober as I am today, but my illness is untreated, and it is a thought that looks like this. This time will be different. Nobody will ever know. I'll just go out for 3 drinks. My problem was drinking with Canadians, but there's no alcoholics in South Carolina. It'll be different this time. It looks like I just got to get it out of my system. If I have a good bender, I'll have a good surrender. Then maybe I'll be able to listen to those AAs or my psychologist or my psychiatrist. It looks like a thought that is on me all day that says, take a drink, 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 until what little willpower I could muster is eroded away and I'm drinking again. It looks like a case of the suddenlies. I'm out there living my life and I have a drink in my hand and I do not know how it happened. It looks like F it. F this, F that. If you were feeling the way that I was feeling, you get drunk too. If you went through what I went through, you drink too. I'm going to kill myself anyway, so why don't I get drunk? And you see what happens is that when I am sober, I have a thought that takes me back again and again to the first drink. And all the willpower that I am able to muster, all the defenses that I am able to muster is not sufficient. I have a thought and I believe the thought. The thought is a lie. I go back to it again and again and again. And that is what it means to have no choice. So we can ask ourselves, have we had any experience where I have said, man, I'm not going to do it again? Now, if you're like me, you're going to be like, no, because I'm always looking for how I'm not like you. Even though all the evidence in my life says, man, we are one and the same. But do I know what it's like to say, I'm not going to drink again? And if you've been in and out of AA or in and out of rehab or in and out of detox or in and out of jail or in and out of the hospital, you know what that's like. But even if it's like, man, I'm not gonna drink at the baby shower, or I'm not gonna drink before I go to court, or I'm just not gonna drink for this one day and I cannot even do it. That is the example of the obsession of the mind. And you see, the obsession of the mind dooms me to drink again. Oh, I'm going to talk about a step one experience that I had. So do I have experience like that? Do I have experience of saying, I don't want to do it again, only to do it again? Bottom of page 24, when this sort of thinking in my experiences, I have that sort of thinking, is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. And unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. It seems that I am beyond human aid. And if you're not sure, we can look at all the things that we tried. I did not try everything, but my experiences, everything that I tried failed. I didn't try detoxes or rehabs, but I tried psychologists, psychiatrists. I tried going to the gym. Some of y'all know my abs. And I have not had them for a long time, but my abs, they didn't lead to abstinence. I promise you, I was ripped, but I kept getting ripped. You know, it didn't work for me. I'm squishy now, which is fine. But that didn't work. The doctors, the counselors, getting into a relationship, getting out of a relationship, going to university, getting a job, leaving a job, going to Lethbridge, Alberta. None of the things that I tried were sufficient. If that is your experience, we are beyond human aid. All of the human powers, and I did not try every human power there was, but all of the human powers that I tried were insufficient. It did not work. You see, I could not, even if I could stay sober for a couple of months, I couldn't do it without wanting to end my life. It wasn't sufficient. And so what that tells me is that I'm beyond human aid. Let's go back to the bottom of page 25. If you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. Man, I was looking for one. I was hoping I didn't have what you had. I was hoping I didn't have to do what you did. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we'd passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, man, that's me. I can't do it on my own power. I can't stay sober on my own power. I am beyond human aid. We had but two alternatives. Oh, no, not these. Oh, no, not these. One was to go into the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. And the other, to accept spiritual help. And I'll tell you what my step one experience was. My step one experience. And it was the last time I ever took a mind-altering substance. Unfortunately, it was not alcohol, because that flows really well. Unfortunately, it was a hoot of crack cocaine, because I like to dabble. And by dabble, I mean I do those non-conference approved dry goods. Don't you worry. But I remember I was in university and I was trying to get some of my homework done, and I had a little bit that I had stashed away, and I had gone and I had taken it. And I was having an effect, the effect produced by crack. And don't you worry, I smoke crack alcoholically, but I promise you, alcoholic. And what had happened to me is I had a step one experience in that moment. You see, I was not at the worst place that I had ever been. You know, when I talk about the worst place that I had ever been, it was in front of the Uptown Bottle Depot in Calgary, Alberta. And I was staying with some people, staying as if I was like couch surfing. The people that I was staying with, we were sleeping in a shopping cart fort that we had made so that people that they had made angry didn't kick our heads in while we slept. That. And then and I think back to that time where I mean, I was living there, I'm an 18-year-old girl living on the streets. Good things do not happen to somebody who is living that way of life. And I think back to that moment, and I'm not there. I'm in university. I got a discussion post that I got to complete. But in that moment, I saw that beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was nothing that I could do to prevent me from ending up back there. That was inevitable. That was my step one experience. And so to be very clear, what I mean when I talk about a step one experience, step one is not, I can never ever safely drink again. That's a part of it. I need to understand the allergy of the body. Step one is that I can never ever safely drink again, and I will. Step one is a promise that an alcoholic like me, I will relapse. I will drink again. It is inevitable and it is imminent for an alcoholic of my type, and that there is nothing that I can do to stop it. And that thrusts me into that hopelessness. And it's important to understand, man, if I don't have alcoholism, I got choices, I got options, I got a lot of things that I can do. But if I have alcoholism, I only have two. I can go on to the bitter ends trying to blot out the consciousness of my intolerable situation as best as I could. And the other is to accept spiritual help. And let us be honest, that is a tough choice. That is a tough choice. You know what I mean? No, you guys, I think I just have like baby alcoholism. I just have a little bit. And I think I just need to do that diet AA. I don't think I got to do all of it. But the reality is, if I have this illness, those are my only options. Go on to the bitter ends, trying to blot out the consciousness, the pain, the suffering of my existence, or to dive into these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. Those are my only options. And what is important to understand is that if I do not choose, I've made a choice. If I do not choose with everything in me to dive into these steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does, I have chosen the alcoholic death. Whether I think so or not, whether I believe it or not, whether I like it or not, if I have alcoholism, to not choose is to choose. And from that place of hopelessness, I grab a hold of the hope that is on offer. From that place of, man, I got no other option. And I'll share with you, man, I can't stay well on a step one experience. I can't stay sober on a step one experience. It is not possible to stay sober on the fact that I will drink again. And it is so easy for me to try to find the path of least resistance. But I've got to dive in. And so if we are in that place, if we're in that place of hopelessness, if we are here today and we can see the walls closing in on us, we can see that, man, I am out of options. I don't got a way out. Let's go to the top of page 25. What I want you to know is there is a solution. There is a solution. The solution that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous is a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, an entire psychic change. That is the answer. But I want to emphasize something. It's that one solution, a solution. I point that out, and that might not sound like good news. But if there is as many solutions as there are alcoholics, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, because I don't have time to try all of those. I don't have to try all the solutions that I tried did not work. But we know we have one, and it is replicable, and it works, and we see that it works, and thank goodness, because as soon as I put down the bottle, the clock starts ticking, and I am in a race. Now, I'm not racing you. I am racing the inevitability of the first drink. I put down the drink. Tick, tick, tick. It is only a matter of time before I either pick up that bottle or for somebody like me, I take an attempt on my life. Those are my options. And that's because I think I'm a little special. So I threw in the suicidal ideation. I'm like, oh, I got an extra one. The results are the same, you guys. The results are the same. But there is a solution. There is. We have a solution, whether you are new here to Alcoholics Anonymous, we have one. Whether you've been around this thing a while and maybe the magic is gone, there is a solution. Whether, man, whether you've been in and out and in and out, and you're like, oh, man, I'm a chronic relapser, this thing could not possibly work for me. What I want you to know is there is a solution. There is. We have an answer. And I love this next line. Almost none of us liked the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, shortcomings which the process required for successful consummation. Y'all know what that means? That means none of us liked the steps. None of us saw them shared on the Zoom screen. Thank you to all who have done service. None of us saw that and thought, oh boy, what a great idea. I just can't wait. I've got my notebook for step 4 right here. Sharing that and my deep dark secrets with God and another human being. Delightful. I'm an open book. You'd like me to sit in quiet for how long? An hour? A whole hour before I do a 6 and 7? Oh, that's great. And my defects of character? I'm giving them to a power greater than myself. I don't get to get my grubby hands in there and try to manage them. That sounds ideal. I'm so sick of managing things. Amends? Even to my ex? Oh boy, I can't wait. Helping other alcoholics? Why, yes, they are so kind, patient, reasonable, totally not selfish and self-centered, and known for punctuality. That sounds great. And then God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe, prayer, meditation. I've got no issues with any of those. Delightful, right? Almost none of us liked it. Almost none of us was open to it. Almost none of us, I mean, we thought it was a good idea. Like we got a list of people that we know that could benefit from the steps, but no, thank you, not for me. And that is good news. I promise it's good news. Because what that means is I don't have to wait to want to do the steps. I don't have to wait till I think the steps are a good idea. I don't have to wait until I think it is applicable to me. Man, I don't have to wait until I think I deserve it. I don't have to wait until I'm not afraid of the 12 steps. Because let's be real, I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid of 5, I'm afraid of 9. And I don't want to do it. I'm afraid you're going to find out who I am and you're going to reject me. I am full of fear, and that's why I don't want to do it. But it says, but we saw that it really worked in others. And we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. So what gets me to grab a hold of this answer? What allows me to grab a hold of the solution that we have here at Alcoholics Anonymous is 2 things. One, I come to the end of myself. I got no other, and I can do that drunk or sober. I come to the end of myself, the end of my abilities, my plans, my designs. I got nothing. I got nothing that I can put between me and the first drink, and I got nothing that I can put between me, and I don't got an answer. And I see that it worked in you. And here's the thing. When I work with my sponsees and they're like, oh, Paige, but I don't want to, or I'm afraid, or I don't like it. Man, that's okay. Do it anyways. The steps don't care why I take them. Here's my experience. Every time I have avoided a spiritual action in Alcoholics Anonymous, it doesn't get better. It doesn't get better. But every time I have taken a spiritual action in Alcoholics Anonymous, I have never regretted it. Never. Not once. I've not regretted an inventory I've done. I've not regretted an amends that I've made or an amends that has been rejected. I have not regretted sharing a 5th step and boring 2 nuns. I didn't even bore one. I've done many goes through, but 2 separate nuns that I bored them. And I think I got some juice. You know what I mean? I think I got some stories. I think I'm mysterious and tough. And nope, I bored nuns. You know what I'm saying? And I've worked with sponsees who some don't stay sober, some tell me to go F myself. And I can tell you that those are the ones that there's usually a correlation between that. But I can tell you I've genuinely never regretted a spiritual action taken in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I have to take them to have that experience. And so it says, we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. So here's the thing, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we only have two disciplinarians: great love and great suffering. And my job as a recovered alcoholic is great love. But alcoholism has a job. And alcoholism's job is great suffering. The responsibility of alcoholism is to bring me enough pain, to take me to that place where I can see that I cannot do it my way anymore. And that is alcoholism's job. And you see, my job is great love. That's my responsibility as an alcoholic who has recovered. And of course, that does mean leading with love and compassion and understanding and a welcoming and a please keep coming. And we're so glad you're here. It is that, but it's more than that. It says, when therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, not just don't drink, but solved, a freedom, a peace, a serenity, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. Now, that simple kit of spiritual tools, that is the 12 steps. And you see, part of my responsibility to those who are suffering, to those who are struggling, to those who do not know that there is a way out, to those who have not found an answer, my responsibility to them is to be a demonstration of this power, a demonstration of these steps, so that you can see in me the change that has happened to me. And actually, I was talking with a friend of mine. This was a couple of years ago, not many, but a couple of years ago. I was on the phone with a friend of mine, and she said, Paige, when I first met you, now when she first met you, it was probably between year 2 and year 3 in sobriety. Paige, when I first met you, you were the most. So before I finish the sentence, what I want to take away is that I win. I win the most, number one, over here, winning. You were the most negative and self-deprecating person that I had ever met. I win. That's the takeaway. And clearly, that is not who I am today. That's not who I am today. Man, I was known as somebody who could suck the energy right out of a room. I was that negative. That's who I was. That's not who I am today. And I promise you, that is not me. I did not come by a plucky attitude based on the intrinsic nature of my being. I am a emotional suck. I am literally, I'm like Eeyore or Oscar the Grouch. That's who I am on my own power. But I have a responsibility to show the power of inventory, to show the power of the 5th step, to show the power of 6 and 7, to show the power of amends, to show the power of prayer, the power of meditation, the power of these 12 steps as a way of life and working with others. It does no good if I am actually, you guys, we all know what it's like. We go to a meeting and there is somebody who is angry and they are dry. You know what I mean? Dry. You don't want to have a cigarette next to them because you're worried they're going to go up like kindling, dry. And they're like, if you want what I have, you got to do what I've done. It's like, no, thank you. No, hard pass. Thank you. Ooh, right? I am called to be a demonstration. And again, the steps do not care why I take them. I can take them with bad motives. I can take them afraid. I can take them thinking they're not going to work. But my experience is every time I take this course of action, every single time I lean in, man, what happens to me is I am changed. I am changed despite myself. I am changed, I don't say against my will, but I am changed. And that power happens to me. It happens to me. I didn't do it. I didn't earn it. I didn't deserve it. I take a course of action that I am convinced could not help. I'm convinced could not apply to me, and I am changed. It says, we have found much of heaven. And where is heaven? Here and now. And if you're like, Paige, what are you talking about? I'll tell you where hell is in my life. Here and now, when I am unrecovered, when I'm in my cups, or when I am dry, hell is my existence in the here and now, being dragged into the future, dragged into the past, here and now. And where is heaven? Here and now. So we have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed. And I'll point out, rocketed means with some velocity. I am not meant to take long work in these steps. We can work these steps quite quickly and quite thoroughly with some velocity to have this experience. And it says into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. Now that fourth dimension, that is a spiritual awakening. And I don't normally bounce over here, but I'm feeling called. So what does a spiritual awakening look like? Let's pop over to page 8. And we're gonna see, and we'll get to a regularly scheduled programming here in a minute. But page 8, and it is the third full paragraph where it talks about trembling. I stepped from the hospital a broken man. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the very bottom of that paragraph, middle of the page. And it says, he talks about how dark it is before the dawn. In reality, that was to be the beginning of my last debauch. This is Bill Wilson's experience. I was soon to be catapulted. Now, to be fair, we've had some spiritual rocket boosters since Bill Wilson. They were using a spiritual trebuchet, a catapult, but now we got some rockets on this bad boy. They catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. What is a spiritual experience? What does it look like to live in that fourth dimension? It looks like this. I was to know happiness. And we're not talking about being able to memorize the definition from the dictionary. I'm talking about knowing, that heart level knowing. You see, by the time I remember, it was before I was 18 months sober, about a year sober. And the best that I could hope for was want to be happy. Do you guys know what I'm saying? I didn't even want to be happy because that was too far. That was too out of a reach. But I'm talking about knowing happiness in my heart. Knowing. Or to know happiness. Peace. And peace was not a thing that I had ever experienced. Man, I'm somebody, on my own power, I begin to come to consciousness. So I'm not even awake yet, and my brain is going. Now, that's not my experience today, but that is my experience from kindergarten onward. I effing hate myself. I effing hate myself. I should kill myself. I hate myself. I hate myself. That is how my brain is when I am living on my will, when I'm living on my power. I don't know peace. I'm constantly worried about something that's going on. I'm replaying, ruminating. Do you know what I mean? I'm not in the here and now. And usefulness. You see, I always wanted to be somebody that was useful. But all of my attempts on my own power were insufficient. Now I know happiness, peace, and usefulness, real usefulness in a way of life, which is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. This thing is a way of life. It's not a set it and forget it program. I don't do the steps over here and then go live my life. The actions, the tangible actions of the 12 steps, I bring them into every single area of my life. This is how I live my life today. But it is incredibly more wonderful as time passes, and I mean that. I mean that. Some of the more difficult things that have ever happened to me in my life have happened in sobriety. And that has been my experience. I've experienced, okay, I just wasn't expecting to go on the tangent. That's why I was like, okay, Paige, maybe it's okay, God. I don't know where I'm being directed. But yeah, I'm being directed. Oh man, I know, it's so freaking annoying because I actually don't like talking about this. And every time where it's on my heart to talk about it, I'm like, come on, I want to talk about it. But at 18 months into my sobriety, and don't worry, I got an eye on the time. I got about 6 minutes left, and I'm not doing great for it. But about 18 minutes into my sobriety, 18 minutes, 18 months into my sobriety, I very suddenly developed a neurological condition. Now that neurological condition, um, what the result of that was is that I'm in a wheelchair and I can't walk without assistance. You know, I can do some wall surfing, I can take a walker out for a bit, but I can't walk without assistance. And what that looks like is I had severe memory and cognitive impairment. What that means is I had to learn how to read again. And so I'll just throw it out. I had to learn how to say anonymity in front of all of y'all twice, which which I don't need any sympathy for that. But I do think I should get a gold star because we all know what it's like when you get the traditions for the first time. You got to read it out in front of anonymity, but we give it our best go, right? And I suffered horribly from a whole bunch of symptoms, including chronic nausea as the result of vertigo, which I will say it's a little bit funny that I get sober and spent almost all my sobriety with the spinning bed. You know the one? You guys know the one. Foot on the floor didn't help with this one. And I vomit more in sobriety than I did drinking, which is a little funny. And those were some of the things that I thought were the most painful. Those were the things that I thought were the most difficult. Then just a couple of years ago, I also sat with my uncle as he passed away. And he was a good man who died an awful, horrific death. And from that, I experienced a level of PTSD it's been bad. It's been bad and it has been difficult and life has not, I promise I just lost my dog a couple weeks ago. Like, he passed away. Like, there is life and life happens and life is hard. And yet there is a peace. There is ability to show up. There is ability to be the person that, man, I didn't ever think that I could be. And to show up, man. And I'll promise you, when the PTSD is bad, when the grief is bad, when I'm having those days where it's like, well, we got snow, so I've been going on little walks. I can't go on a walk, and the pain, and it's there, and I can't do it. What I have learned is that if I am present to my pain, and if I am without judgment present to that, and present to what works and present to what helps, what I know is beyond a shadow of a doubt, anything and everything that I go through gets to be used to help another human being. So I don't have to go through it. I get to grow through it so that I can help you, so that I can walk with you through your pain, so that I can walk with you through your suffering. Man, it was right after my uncle died. It was the very next day I had a sponsee that was already scheduled. In hindsight, maybe not the best idea. Maybe I should have taken a day off. And I go and I sit down with her and I let her know, like, hey girl, like, I don't know. I'm not going to be on my game. Like, I'm going to be off. It's not about you. And she says, hey, I'm going to be off. My mother-in-law was airlifted to the hospital and she's in the ICU, and my partner, he's there with her and I don't know what he needs. And I was able to say, I know exactly what he needs, as I was just there going through exactly that. You see, that's the economy of grace. Everything that I go through gets turned into good if I'm able, and that doesn't take all of the way of the pains. It hurts. It frickin' hurts. But if I go through it, I get to use it for others. I remember I found out an ex had passed away, and 30 minutes later, I'm sitting with a sponsee. And what are we working on? We're writing on sex conduct. I'm helping her with her 4th step. You know what I mean? That's the economy of grace. And so let's go back to page 25. Page 25. The great fact. And we're second full paragraph. This is the spiritual awakening. The great fact is just this and nothing less. So just as much as the fact is that I will drink again if I do not have a spiritual awakening, this is just as much a fact as that. It's just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences. Deep and effective, that is what is on offer. Something deep and something effective, not just don't drink, or settling for that of the educational variety. So often I approach the steps in a way that I never approached alcohol. You know, I wasn't sipping my drinks, but I want to sip my AA. Do you know what I mean? I got to go after it. And if I go after it, I get the effect. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and towards God's universe. How I show up to life, how I see the world, how I see you, has radically changed. The central fact of our lives today. So the main fact, the center fact of my life today is the absolute certainty. There's no wiggle room in that. Just as there is no wiggle room as I will drink again, there is no wiggle room in the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. There's two ways to read that. As I believe it was Sandy that pointed that out, because I got it from Scott L. Yeah, you know, that idea that our Creator has entered into our hearts and from my heart into my life in a way that is indeed miraculous. Now, the other way to read that is that my Creator has entered into my heart and lives, as in lives within my heart. Now, either way, where's God? One of the places in which God has found my heart. And it says he has commenced to accomplish those things for us, which we could never do by ourselves. What could I never do by myself? Permanent, contented sobriety. And if you're here today and permanent, contented sobriety feels impossible, feels out of grasp, please let us help you. It does not take long to get well, and our very life depends on it. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Boom.